welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we blend those casual conversations with insightful discussions on the latest in tech and gadgets, you know?
The stuff that really matters.
Exactly, the stuff that really matters. And today's deep dive, well, let's just say it's a bit of a wild ride.
Buckle up, yeah.
Yeah, buckle up, because we're talking everything from, the shiny new Nintendo Switch 2 to the sometimes not so shiny realities of global trade wars and how they're shaking things up.
And shaking things up in a big way, potentially reshaping the entire tech landscape and even social media as we know it.
Small potatoes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, we've got a lot to cover.
We do.
And we're going to try to do it all in our signature bite-sized way.
You got it.
All right, so first things first, the Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah, the hype is real.
The hype is real, June 5th. That's the date circled on everyone's calendars. And the rumor mill's churning with a potential price tag of around $450 in the U.S.
Sounds about right, given what we've seen in the past, and especially with inflation,
Oh, yeah. Inflation never sleeps. But, okay, so from what you've been reading, what are the early impressions like? Is it a radical redesign or more of a refinement?
It seems like it's more of an evolution than a revolution, if you will. They're sticking with the familiar Switch form factor, just, scaling things up a bit.
Ah, so a bit bigger, a bit beefier.
Exactly, bigger and beefier.
Hmm.
It looks like they managed to pack in more power under the hood, which is essential for those next-gen games and features.
Right, it's not just about looks, it's about performance. And those new features you mentioned, they sound pretty slick, like the C button for chatting and controllers that double as a mouse.
Yeah, that's clever, right? Adds a whole new layer of versatility without completely overhauling the design. Think about navigating menus or even some unconventional gameplay possibilities with that mouse functionality.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's pretty cool. And the overall feel, how's that shaping up?
Word on the street is that the controllers are sturdier, the whole device is a bit heavier, has a more premium feel,
Oh, I like the sound of that, more robust. Less like it's going to fall apart in my hands.
Exactly. It's the little things that make a difference.
Absolutely. But let's be real, the games are what make or break a console. And it sounds like Nintendo wasn't messing around at that New York City event.
Oh no, they brought the big guns. They had some seriously impressive demos going on.
Okay, spill the tea. What was the standout title, the one that has everyone buzzing?
Well, everyone's talking about Mario Kart World as the potential killer app. And for good reason. From the early buzz, it looks gorgeous, plays spectacularly, and they even threw in a playable cow character.
A playable cow character. Okay, that's classic Nintendo right there. Gotta love that quirky charm.
Exactly. It's what they do best, injecting those unexpected bits of fun.
So all signs pointing to a pretty successful launch then.
It definitely looks that way. But here's where things get a little tricky. Your sources also mentioned some potential hiccups.
What kind of hiccups?
It seems like those pesky tariffs might be rearing their ugly heads again. There are reports of possible pre-order delays in the U.S., specifically due to these ongoing trade tensions with China.
Oh, man, tariffs always throwing a wrench in the works. And this isn't just speculation, is it? This is actually impacting Nintendo's bottom line.
Yeah, it is. Their stock took a noticeable dip when this news hit, so it's not just gamers feeling the heat.
That's crazy to think about how these global forces can ripple down and affect even something as seemingly simple as a new video game console.
It's a prime example of the interconnectedness of the tech world and the global economy. Everything is intertwined.
So let's talk about those global forces then, because China's not just slapping tariffs on gaming consoles, right? It's a much broader retaliation.
Oh yeah, they're playing hardball retaliatory tariffs on all American imports. Plus, they're holding back on those crucial rare earth elements, the ones we need for all sorts of high-tech manufacturing.
That doesn't sound good. And what's the fallout been like in the tech world specifically?
Well, your sources point to some pretty significant tremors. The NASDAQ took a massive hit. We're talking trillions of dollars potentially wiped out. And there's serious talk of bear market looming on the horizon.
Trillions with a T. That's a mind-boggling number.
It is, and it really underscores the potential severity of these trade wars.
So who's getting hit the hardest in this whole mess?
The hardware sector is definitely feeling the most pain. Right now, they're heavily reliant on manufacturing in China and Vietnam, so they're caught right in the crosshairs.
Makes sense. But what about software companies? They're a little more detached from the physical manufacturing side of things, right?
True, they are a bit more insulated, but they're not entirely immune. Your sources mentioned the EU digital service tax as a potential curveball that could throw a wrench in their operations as well.
So nobody's getting off scot-free. It seems like uncertainty is the name of the game right now.
Precisely. And that uncertainty makes it incredibly difficult for companies to plan their next moves and for investors to make informed decisions.
Speaking of navigating these choppy waters, Apple's no stranger to the tariff game. They've been through this before. Any chance they might wriggle out of it this time?
Well, the general consensus from your sources is that exemptions are probably less likely under the current administration than they were in the past. So Apple's likely going to have to get creative.
So what's their playbook look like in this situation?
Well, they've got a few tried and true tactics. They'll likely lean on squeezing suppliers to cut costs, potentially passing some of those increased costs onto consumers, and bracing themselves to absorb some margin compression.
So a bit of a juggling act, basically trying to balance keeping prices competitive while also protecting their profits.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act, but they've managed it before.
And long term, it seems like their strategy is to diversify their manufacturing away from China, moving some production to India and Vietnam.
That's the plan. But it's a massive undertaking fraught with logistical challenges and its own set of risks.
Okay, so moving on from tariffs to something that's been dominating the headlines lately, the whole TikTok saga, the potential ban, the forced sale. The drama never seems to end.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and your sources suggest that a deal might have been very close before that recent deadline. Who knows what's happening now?
And the name that keeps popping up in all this is Oracle, right? They're being floated as a potential minority stakeholder in the U.S. TikTok business.
Exactly, and this isn't just some random app we're talking about here. TikTok is constantly being described as incredibly valuable, a real powerhouse in the social media landscape.
And of course, the big elephant in the room is that whole national security angle, right? The concern about U.S. user data potentially ending up in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
That's the core issue, and it's a valid one. It raises all sorts of questions about data privacy and who has access to sensitive information.
It's a huge deal, and it's not like there are tons of alternatives, right, when it comes to social media in the U.S. It's basically YouTube, Meta, and TikTok. That's it.
You hit the nail on the head. The stakes are high because there are so few major players in this space. Whoever controls TikTok in the U.S. wields a lot of influence.
And Oracle's already got a foot in the door with that hosting agreement they have with TikTok, so expanding that into operational control would be a logical next step.
It would, and it would give them a significant foothold in the social media arena.
It's fascinating to see how advertisers are reacting to all this uncertainty because you'd think they'd be running for the hills, but your sources paint a different picture.
Yeah, it's surprising, right? Data from McMac shows that TikTok ad traffic actually bounced back strong after that initial ban scare in January, even surpassing the levels we saw during the holiday season.
Wow. So despite all the drama, advertisers are still seeing value in TikTok as a platform.
They are. It speaks volumes about its effectiveness as an advertising channel.
But that doesn't mean other platforms aren't benefiting from the uncertainty.
Oh, no, during that January scare, there was a noticeable shift in ad spending towards Alphabet. So Google and YouTube and also Pinterest.
Ah, makes sense. Those are seen as safer bets, more established, less likely to disappear overnight.
Exactly. Brand safety is a huge concern for advertisers, and they're drawn to platforms that offer stability and proven results.
And speaking of platforms facing challenges, your sources mentioned that Meta, Facebook, and Instagram saw a traffic dip in Q1.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Some analysts are speculating that it might be linked to their decision to scale back fact-checking efforts.
Wow. So even internal policy decisions can have major ripple effects in the advertising world. It's a constantly shifting landscape.
It is, and advertisers have to be adaptable, constantly reevaluating their strategies and hedging their bets.
Okay, so we've talked tariffs, we've talked social media now. Let's shift gears to something a bit different, Tesla, and this idea of unprecedented brand damage.
This analysis from JP Morgan really caught my eye. They're arguing that Tesla's brand is taking a hit that goes beyond the usual bumps in the road, production delays, lack of new models, that kind of thing.
So what are they attributing this to? What's the root cause, in their view?
Well, the analyst quoted in your sources specifically points to Elon Musk's growing involvement in politics as a potential long-term negative for the brand.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about the cars themselves, it's about the public perception of the person at the helm.
Exactly. It's a case study in how a CEO's personal brand can become intertwined with the company's image, for better or worse.
And in this case, they're suggesting it's for worse.
That's their assessment. But it's worth noting that not everyone agrees. There are still plenty of bullish analysts out there who remain optimistic about Tesla's prospects.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Then some see a storm brewing, while others see clear skies ahead.
That's a good way to put it, and ultimately only time will tell how this all plays out.
Okay, so final stop on our whirlwind tour of the tech landscape. Let's talk about the big picture, the overall economic outlook, and what your sources had to say about the Federal Reserve's perspective.
Well, Fed Chair Jerome Powell has been pretty upfront about the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty right now. The new administration's policies on trade, immigration, fiscal matters, regulation, it's all creating a somewhat unpredictable environment.
So, how's the Fed approaching this whole situation? Are they hitting the panic button or taking a more measured approach?
They seem to be taking a wait-and-see approach. For now, Powell has stated that their current monetary policy stance is well-placed to handle the current risks, but they need more data, more clarity on how these policies are actually playing out before making any major adjustments.
So, they're not rushing into anything, but they're also not sitting idly by.
Exactly. They're monitoring the situation closely, gathering information, and preparing to adapt as needed.
And of course, the Fed's always got those two primary goals in mind, right? Maximizing employment and keeping inflation in check.
Those are their mandates.
Yeah.
And Powell has reiterated their commitment to both. He's also acknowledged the public's frustration with high prices and the challenges businesses are facing when it comes to planning for the future, given all this uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in for everyone involved.
It is, and it almost feels like we're back in that kind of economic fog we experienced during COVID-19, but this time it's driven by a different set of factors.
Right, a different kind of storm, but a storm nonetheless. And the possibility of both unemployment and inflation rising simultaneously, that's a real headache for the Fed.
It's a nightmare scenario, and Powell has talked about the framework they use to tackle that kind of situation. Basically, it involves assessing how far each variable is from its target and how long it'll take to get things back on track.
It's a delicate balancing act and one that has huge implications for all of us.
Absolutely. The Fed's decisions have a ripple effect throughout the entire economy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that the tech world is facing some pretty significant headwinds right now, from global trade wars to shifting social media landscapes to broader economic uncertainty. It's a lot to process.
It is, but it's also an incredibly exciting time to be following these developments because they're shaping the future in profound ways.
And that's what we're all about here at Byte-Sized Tech, breaking down these complex issues and making them accessible and understandable for everyone.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, and we're here to empower you to navigate the ever-changing world of technology.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. We hope you found this deep dive informative and engaging as always. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for future topics, so feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fun and insightful tech discussions.
See you next time.
See you next time.